Hey, what's going on, Cashflow hackers? It's Chris, Life 180, and I am here with all my buddies. Well, hopefully not all my buddies, but a lot of my buddies. And we are going to be talking about whole life insurance. We're going to be going over why I think everybody wants whole life insurance, even if you don't think you need it. It's one of those things where if you listen to the financial pundits online, Dave Ramsey, Susie Orman, I don't know, a lot of other people, they'll try to convince you that life insurance is just something that you need for a very short window of time, maybe when you're raising a family or something of that nature, and that your ultimate goal should be to self-insure, right? And so I've done a lot of talks about this with Garrett Gunderson. I've created a lot of videos on this just across the board. So I thought it would be really fun to bring on some of the guys from the team to talk about their perspective and their opinions and kind of like the emotional reasons and the technical reasons, financial reasons why they believe that having life insurance of some form is a wise thing to do, even if you feel like you don't need it, even if you feel you can be self-insured. Because one of the things that I know to be true is that the people that have the most life insurance are the people that don't need it. So I find it really ironic that the people like Dave Ramsey's are trying to convince people that like your goal should be to have no life insurance eventually, even though the most successful people in the world are the ones who leverage it the most. So I guess let's do this. Let's go around the horn a little bit and have everybody kind of give let's try to keep it to like 2 minutes, right? For each of you kind of going through and saying, all right, 2 minutes, Michael Garcia, why do you think everybody wants life insurance or should want it? Maybe the reason they don't want it is they just don't know what they don't know, right? Like, so why do you think they should want it, even if they feel like they don't need it? You're muted. Unmute.
Sorry about that.
There we go. You're good.
For me, I was pretty ignorant about life insurance before I got in the industry, and so I didn't want it. But for me, once I understood it, and it was like, it's for my daughter. Number one, I wanted to get life insurance for my daughter. But I think why you would want it, even if you don't necessarily need it, maybe you do have a ton of money, is you can leverage another pool of money, right? And one of the most powerful things is leverage. And so if you pass or something happens, instead of leaving your daughter, or in my case, my daughter, a smaller amount, I would, leave her a much larger amount. By the way, it's tax-free. I can use my money while it's in there, and it's protected. In fact, I know I have a policy through One America, and there's a clause I love in there, but it basically says, hey, if I were to get sued and there was a judgment against me, said I have to surrender my policy and pay it out, One America contractually cannot even pay me that money. Therefore, it's safe. It goes to my daughter. It's just smart, right? Like, I don't have to worry about this money. So, number one, you magnify your investment, right? You put a little bit in, you get a large death benefit, and then of course the money's safe.
I love it. All right, we're gonna keep going. I'm gonna go with you, Matt.
Yeah. So I think anybody that's thinking about the death benefit as just something you pass on to your loved ones, and you don't need that anymore. You only need it for a certain period of time. It's really short-sighted thinking, and really underestimates the power of the death benefit. So for me, I don't have kids right now. Maybe one day in the future, see what happens in life, right? But still, I wanted as much death benefit as I could with both of my policies, because I'm thinking long term, and I understand the power of the death benefit. One of those things is the living benefits as well. So I was thinking about this the other day when I was making some content, and I asked the question, I'm 35 years old, and I was talking about the living benefits and stuff and long-term care. It's like, being 35, healthy, do I really need to worry about long-term care right now? And I would actually argue, yes. The earlier you plan for these things, the better, the stronger position you're going to be in when you need these types of things. So, you have things like health insurance, long-term care insurance, that stuff's fine. But I've personally seen a lot of the red tape and the restrictions and all the things that, man, it could be a real pain when you need those things the most. And the great thing about the death benefit with these policies is that if something were to happen to us, if we get diagnosed with a chronic, critical, terminal illness, we have access to a large portion of that death benefit that gives us choice, options, dignity. We get to choose the care that we want. If it's alternative care or a certain facility that we want to be in or whatever, right? It just, and when we get older, those medical expenses, long-term care expenses, like people don't think about that until it's too late. So the earlier you set these types of things up, the better position you're going to be in. And then not to mention, like people like Dave Ramsey talk about, you don't need life insurance anymore when you have your portfolio built up and you make millions of dollars with his 12% annual mutual fund, whatever. But at the end of the day, the life insurance death benefit is the most efficient way to pass on wealth to the next generation. You can't beat it. It avoids probate. It's income tax free. It goes to your beneficiaries very quickly. Like it's pretty black and white when you pass away. It doesn't have to go through the state and all that. So I just think, not to mention all the, other benefits we get with the policies, but just the death benefit itself, it's really short-sighted to think that you only need it for a certain period of time, because there's so many other things that it can do for you and so many other problems that it solves. So that's my take on it.
I love it. All right. The other Matt. Not the other Matt. You're just as important.
The other Matt. And Matt. It's funny. Before I got into this industry, I thought life insurance, like who the heck talks about life insurance? It's so boring. Like, what's the need? But man, when you start getting into this industry and you realize how many problems it actually solves and all the things that it could do for people, like I'm like just so passionate about like just why don't you have life insurance? Why do you think you don't need it? Right. It's one of the main things I think most people know life insurance for. It's to cover a guaranteed event. We're all going to die, right? For sure. It's going to pay out. Right. And somebody can argue, well, I don't have any kids. Well, a lot of times the younger generation might think that. And if you really talk with them and ask them, do they, foresee having kids and family in the future? A lot of them probably say, yeah, that's a good possibility. And if you could get life insurance now and lock it in at such a low, affordable rate, why not lock it in now, right? But let's say in the future you decide not to have kids and, you're thinking I have this death benefit. It's not going to go to anyone in my family. A lot of times you can leave that death benefit to a charity. Why not, give that money to a charity or a cause that you believe in, right? And I think I just had a talk with an agent today. Could you imagine like in the 80s, if everybody got a whole life policy, everybody in this country, it would probably solve most financial problems in our country, right? And I think you could just do so good. And really, it was just a lack of education and helping people understand that. So that's one, the death benefit. The second, like what Matt was talking about, the living benefits are so important. We talk about retirement, we talk about saving for the future, but we have a 1 in 3 chance that we'll have a disability before we hit retirement. And disability, let's say you can't perform 2 out of the 6 daily duties of life. You can't feed yourself, dress yourself, and stuff like that. In that case, a lot of companies offer living benefits where you can accelerate the death benefit in advance. And the reason why this is important, you have a higher likelihood of needing a chronic illness than you would actually retirement statistically when we think about that, right? And if you look at Dave Ramsey's point of view, he's selling Xander term insurance with no living benefit. So great job with your 12% growth in your mutual funds. But 3-4 years in, that amount of money that you've accumulated usually is not enough because you're still building it, right? And that term insurance is not going to do anything for you because it probably doesn't have any living benefits. Where with the whole life, especially the ones that we work with, they have chronic illness rider where you can accelerate that death benefit, a good portion of it in advance, even if you haven't accumulated that amount of money in your cash value. So I think that in itself is so important. If you look around what's going on with people's health and the foods that we're eating and how we're getting poisoned and all that, that's another topic. I think something like that is so important. And then of course, like what Michael was saying, just the utility of it, the amazing savings vehicle, the tax advantages that you have, it just solves a lot of problems. And I think if you think life insurance is not needed, you definitely need to sit with somebody and look at all the features and benefits and things that you're probably not thinking about.
Love it. I love it. Well said. Mr. Kampke, you're next.
All right, so I'm going to tell a little bit about my personal experience recently with this. I lost my dad about a month ago, and I lost his older sister, my aunt, about 2 weeks ago. And my aunt had a small $10,000 life insurance policy that was barely enough to cover, cremation expenses and cover the basics, right? Wasn't even to meet her wishes at final time. Now, my dad's been in insurance for over 20 years, and I can't believe I'm saying this. He didn't even have life insurance. So I look at this from the standpoint of knowing the fullness of what life insurance can do across someone's lifetime. But now that we're in this stage, my family, where my mom doesn't have a whole lot put away, and I can see if everything was set up as well as we teach through Life 180, how much different our life could be right now. Some of the things that, like, my wife and I are looking at putting our kids in a private school and looking at what that would do for my mom, for her house and being in her living situation. There's a huge void left by not having life insurance. Now, are we all going to be fine because my dad didn't have it? Yep, the funeral's paid for and everything. But life insurance isn't about just burial costs. It's about what I think, Michael, you mentioned it, taking, very big death benefit that can be done, putting it into the family. And for me, it's about what can life insurance do to up level us to the next level of economic independence. And so I see this big missing piece here in our family that could have been there. We had the knowledge, we had the education around it, and my dad just didn't have it. So for me, why would we want it? Well, we want it because of what it could do for the family right now. We could put that money to work. We could buy real estate. We could do a bunch of different things to produce cash flow from a death benefit from my dad's passing that could change my immediate family, could change my mom's family. We could do things for charity. We could do things for church. It could really have a big impact, but without that, we don't have the ability to make those changes. And now, it comes back to us. If we still want to make those changes, we still have to, develop the skills and work harder and do those different things in our own lives, which is fine. We're all, wanting to do that, but it would have just helped accelerate the process if my dad would have had a policy and what that could have done for our family. So big time on, what it's been for me, just reflecting on all this in the last month, and it would have definitely been a game changer.
I know that it's been hard. I know you've been going through a lot. I did not know about your aunt as well as your father, so I'm sorry to hear about that. That it adds in a lot of additional challenges, right? So, you said something there that actually made me think about it, and it's like your dad was in health insurance, right? He wasn't necessarily in life insurance.
True, but he's done PNC, he's done life. He's been around long enough.
So he's been around the block enough to know.
He knew, yeah.
But that goes to show, like, just to me, like, how important it is to actually practice what you preach and have, the products that you're selling and being able to be an example, just so you can show people what you have going on and talk about how you're using it, and you can authentically kind of get behind what you're doing. You're going to be able to be much more influential and impactful and real about the scenario. If you're not selling it, or if you're not owning it yourself, I honestly, don't think there's much of a place to go and sell it to somebody else, because it's kind of hypocritical for you to kind of put that on somebody else, being like, you should have this, and you because of all the reasons that you're saying you believe in it. But then, at least the way that we sell it and position it, it's very much like kind of like a responsibility. And one of the things that kind of came to my mind when you were talking is the fact that life insurance, when you have it set up properly and you utilize it to solve these different problems, and you utilize it for cash value and the living benefits and the death benefit and the legacy planning and all these things that go behind it, and kind of wrap around this product and all the different problems that this one product can solve, it's kind of like an accountability coach, right? And in a sense where, this one product is going to hold you accountable to do what you say you want to do. Because, Dave Ramsey's idea of buy term invest the difference, right? Like, he may be able to show you on paper why that's better, but I always say life doesn't exist on a spreadsheet. And I could mathematically show you why the spreadsheet that he's showing is not right. But let's just say it was right. Let's just say it was, and I lost that argument, which I didn't, but let's just hypothetically in this bubble say that happened. Well, even if he were right from a mathematical perspective, which once again he isn't, I got to say he isn't a lot, because if I don't, somebody's going to cut this up and is going to make it sound like I'm like cheering on Dave Ramsey, and I'm not going to do that. So, it's even if that were the case and he did win that argument, the math behind it, there's so many emotional reasons and so many behavioral problems with planning, and the having a life insurance from a long-term planning perspective, if you buy it when you're, Matt Tuchel's age, and you get it at 35 and you have it there. He doesn't have kids. He has no liability. He doesn't need life insurance. He has it because he wants it. He has it because he sees the value in it. He has it because he knows the different problems that it's going to solve. He has it because he's planning 30 years in advance for what he doesn't know is going to come down the road when he's 65. And maybe he's got health issues. Maybe he's not insurable. Maybe he's got, by that time, 4 kids and a couple grandkids and like all these things that are going on. And he's going to want life insurance because he's going to have a lot more money. He's created a lot more success. He's going to want to leave a legacy, and his life has changed by then. Maybe he's not insurable at that point in time. So the fact that he's doing it now and he's able to use the policy and the cash value for living benefits now, which whatever, probably are not as important to him right now unless he gets sick, obviously. But he's got access to the cash value. You can use it for real estate. You can use it to expand his business. He can use it to invest in himself, doing conferences and self-development and investing in different skills and, whatever that he needs to be able to increase his earning capacity, right? To me, that's what this is all about. And so, I always say it's about, well, okay, I'm going to stop right there. I just wanted to hit on that accountability coach component to it, because it's not just an accountability coach. It also kind of bails you out when you're inevitably going to screw up, right? Like, I don't think any one of us, I don't think there's anybody alive, even the most successful people alive, you're not getting through this lifetime and your career without making some significant financial mistakes. And if you do, I'm going to tell you didn't take enough chances. Like,
sure.
You're going to screw up, and that's inevitable, and that's cool. It's beautiful, right? Like, you got to fail forward. You got to learn from your mistakes. You got to grow. You got to get better. You got to use those as opportunities to expand and to challenge yourself to hit the next level. And so you're going to make mistakes. If you make mistakes and you don't have the right financial tools in place when you do, then the mistakes get compounded. And that's where the buy term invest a difference strategy concept really falls apart. So that's just my thought there. So Ian, all that said, let's go to you.
For me, it's pretty simple. I want to leave this world a better place when I'm gone. And there's no other way that I've found that I can reliably do that I can plan and work now during my working years when I'm healthy and put into a policy to ensure that the next generation will have something. And to me, that's the biggest, the biggest selling point for life insurance for me personally. I know we talk so much about all the benefits that I can give you while you're alive and the living benefits, being able to use the cash value, all that. And that's all great and super important. And for me, Matt Siebert touched on it. And I always think of that quote, be the change you want to see in the world. I don't have any kids, but I do want to leave a legacy, whether it's for potential kids in the future, people in my family, or more than likely my community. I have plans, things I want to do in the future, and things that I want to ensure that are going to happen. And there's no other way that I can ensure that there's going to be the amount of capital and the amount of resources available, maybe when I'm alive, but it will absolutely happen, at least when I'm gone. And yeah, and for me, that's my thinking is just leaving this world a better place for the future generation in whatever way that looks like, whether that's, and I plan on being here for a very long time and being healthy while I'm here, but you just never know what's going to happen. And having a whole life insurance policy that I know is going to be there is something that I can rely on and that I know is going to fulfill my wishes and desires.
I love it. All right. We got a late arrival, Mr. Charles Newton. So
What's happening?
Are you up to speed on what we're doing here?
We're talking about, as far as I understand, why we need life insurance or why it's a good idea. Is that
what is your perspective on why people should want life insurance, even if they feel like they don't need it?
Well, I can speak from my perspective of why I think it's so important. Um, and it's because I'm a dad, I'm a father of 2 young children, and my wife is the chief home officer of the household. Therefore, I'm the sole source of income. So if I passed away, my family would basically be in a tremendous amount of distress without the life insurance that I have in place. I mean, if you think about it, guys, if I were to pass away, not only would my family be mourning my death, and if I didn't have life insurance in place and I didn't have a plan in place, they would also be in an emergency mode. They would just have so much amount of fear of what their next step would be. But because I care about my family, because I love them so much, I have a trust, and that trust lays out exactly what's going to happen, whether I'm here to see it through or not, and how that trust is funded, because I'm still building my assets over time, is with the use of life insurance. And I have term, and I also have permanent whole life insurance as well. And for 2 different reasons. The term is because I know at some point that's going to end, but I still have the need for life insurance when I'm older, whether it be long-term care, whether it be a safe vessel where I want to invest money in properties. So I think one of the biggest challenges is, one, people think that, oh, I should just, I can push this later. I don't need to get a policy right now. I'm healthy. The thing is, guys, we don't know what's going to happen in our lives. We don't know what tomorrow holds. Nobody knows what tomorrow holds. So it's important to take care of the things that are important to you now. Like, if family is truly important to you, then prove it by getting life insurance. If you think that a legacy is important, prove it by having those plans in place, so that your family is taken care of, whether you're here to see it or not. So that's what I got.
I love that. One of the things this is funny. So one of the things that you said that just made me think about it, it reminds me of a guy who is kind of I don't know, I don't want to call him a mentor, but he was a manager when I first got into the business, and he's nobody that I would associate with or hang out with at this point in time. He's a bit too abrasive for my taste, but I say that because his statements were abrasive, and while they were abrasive, they're also kind of true at the same time, like on the back end of it, right? So he would always say, and we would go in with people, and like I'd be sitting across a kitchen table. This is back before the internet, basically, before I would be using the internet for leads. It was like old school, going around Vermont, like driving 100 miles just to go meet with somebody to talk about $100 a month term policy kind of deal, and oh, the days. And so, it's we'd be sitting there and he'd be talking to them, and like I would just, this is like really at the very beginning of my career, and he'd be literally talking to him and be like, listen, you don't need life insurance, but here's why you want it. Like, life insurance is a character sale. By you telling me that you don't want life insurance, you're telling me that you don't love anybody or anything, right? And like he would be that bold about it, like, and he's just like, and it, like, totally not my style, but like, but at the same time, you can listen to that and you can kind of process it, right? And kind of come to your like, holy crap, there's some truth in that, right? Like, I would never say it like that. I would never be, but and he even got to the point where, like, one time there was a guy that was like, we were sitting with him and his wife, and they had their 2 kids in the other room, like playing, and she was a stay-at-home mom, homeschooled the kids, and he was a really successful, like, $250,000 income earner kind of deal. And he got a policy on himself, and he only did like $1.5 million on himself. In his mind, that was plenty, and he wasn't going to hear it. And then when it came to getting insurance on his wife, he was like, no, like, if she dies, like, it's no big deal. Like, and he just wasn't going to hear it. And then when we tried to get him to understand, like, hey, if you die, you're really not going to help her solve many problems with the debt that you have the mortgage debt, the auto debt, the student loan debt, you know, because she had student loan debt, like all these different things. And he basically said, well, the $1.5 million is good enough to cover the debts, but it's not gonna, like, he's like, I'm not here to take care of her once I die. If I die, it's her problem. Like, I'll pay for the debts and it's her problem. And like literally, which, you know, the good and the bad of this, the guy that, you know, was training me was like, he went into his whole character sale, right? Like, he's like, listen, man, this is like, this shows your character, blah, 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 blah. Like, if you don't see the value in this, and if you don't get it, like, I could never be friends with a guy like you, is what he told him. He goes, basically, like, your attitude is a scum of the earth kind of thing. Like, you're not taking care of your responsibilities. And he's like, if you're not willing to do what you need to do, I'm not willing to help you at all. And he got up and like, we left. And I'm like, what just happened? Like, you know what I mean? And like, yeah, crazy. Like, this is the kind of crap that
I think that's awesome. And I pretty much resonate with that. Like, if you don't care about your family,
yeah.
Even if it's just a term policy, just in case, like,
yeah,
like, I don't even want to be around you, because like how could you not care?
Yeah.
Right. And so that's what I'm saying. Like, there's a lot of truth in it, right? Like, I think there's maybe a more tactful way to communicate it.
For sure. I need to work. I need to work on my tact for sure.
Yeah.
But the principle of it is what it is. So, you know, like, I look at it, and I did a video on this, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 months ago. And I think the thing I love about life insurance, specifically whole life insurance, is that it's a self-actualization of what you want to happen. And I think one of the problems of our world right now is people don't think long enough term. They're not intentional enough about what they do with their life, how they plan for the future, how they think, you know, thinking proactively about what they want to create, you know, for life. And, you know, in utilizing the philosophies and the strategies and the products that we use, it's what, and it's one of the reasons I said the accountability coach thing, is it forces you to think in the ways, like, because you're not going to really maximize what you're able to maximize utilizing these products unless you really emotionally dig deep and you think about what you want it to look like 30, 40 years from now. Maybe, you know, if you're in your 40s or 50s, you know, and it's, or even, you know, more time than that from now. And what I think is cool is, like, if you're young, you know, and, you know, Charles, you're young, you got, you know, a newborn basically, and, you know, kids at home. Matt doesn't even have kids yet. He's still doing it. You know, Jeff, you've got kids. Michael, do you have kids, Michael? You do. I know Matt's got kids. I've got 3 kids, you know, so, like, Ian, do you have kids? No.
No.
Yeah?
No, I do not.
No. Okay. So we got 2 people here with no kids, and the rest of us have, you know, families and whatever, but we all believe in it. And at the end of the day, you know, what we need the products to do for us right now in this very moment may change because we are in different windows of time, you know, of the timeline of our life. But I think if we were to build a timeline of life, we all go through these windows and these different phases of life, right? Like, we get out of college and we got to save and we got to start thinking about, like, building our foundation. And then maybe you get in a relationship, maybe you get married, and you're like, okay, I got to take care of my spouse. I have this extra responsibility. And so maybe life insurance actually, for most people, starts coming into play. But then you have a family, and then you got to start thinking about, like, all the different things that come along with that, and the liabilities, and the, you know, the extra things that you got to take care of if something tragic happens to you. And then you got to think about, like, college planning, and you got to think about, like, weddings, and you got to think, you know, all the things that go along with parenthood. And then, you know, then they grow and they leave and they're gone, and they're, you know, they go through college, and you're like, okay, now you got, like, the empty nest thing going. It's just you and your spouse, and you're hanging out, and you're going, okay, what happens now? Well, that's when, you know, you want to have a little extra cash flow. Maybe you want to take some, you know, swings and borrow against your policy and leverage it and invest in real estate. Maybe you want to travel more. Maybe it provides a foundation that allows you to take risks in other areas. Or maybe it's nice because all the stress of raising a family and all that stuff, you know, cause some health issues, and you need access to some capital, or, you know, if you're, I know plenty of people that have been diagnosed with cancer and with other diseases in their 40s and 50s, you know, right when their kids are leaving. having access to your death benefit to accelerate during that period of time is amazing. Matt said it. We're not getting out of this alive. The thing that drives me nuts with people that compare, like, I just did this review of the White Coat Investor the other day. His interview with the Deeper Pockets or Bigger Pockets guys, Deeper Pockets, Bigger Pockets. When he was doing that, he kept comparing buying whole life insurance to buying auto and home insurance. And he's like, typically, if you don't have to buy it, would you? No. If you don't need it, you don't buy it. And
Oh, come on.
The cliffhanger.
Damn Dominican Republic.
Okay, say it again.
the thing is, you need life insurance. Is that where I was? You need life insurance because you know you're going to die, right? If you get auto insurance, you get homeowners insurance, you're getting that totally just in case. Maybe something happens, maybe a pipe bursts, maybe your house burns down, maybe somebody gets injured on your property and you got an umbrella policy to protect you or a homeowner's policy to protect you. Maybe you get into a bad car accident. Maybe you have an uninsured motorist covered. Like, these things are just in case, right? Like, whatever. There's no question. I've never talked to anybody and been like, hey, are you going to live forever? And have them say yes, right? Like, we know we're going to die.
Yeah.
And so, like, if people can't figure out the fact that they know that they're going to die, and they can't resonate with the fact that they want to leave the next generation better off and actually build, not just leave money, but do what Charles talked about, leave a system, right? Leave it in a trust, leave a set of rules. When you do it the way Charles is talking about, and the way we talk about a lot of times, is you're able to manage your money from beyond the grave. You know what I mean? Like, you're able to actualize a plan and a distribution strategy to take it to the next generation. Now, is that going to solve the problem forever? No, but it'll handle it for a good period of time, and it'll allow, kind of best practices to teach your kids, to teach your family, to teach your heirs, the systems and the rules and the processes and how to handle money the right way, so then they can turn around and do the same thing. You can even set it up so part of the trust is required to get them life insurance. If they want to take part in the trust, they got to turn around and do the same thing for themselves, for their kids, and you can create this ripple effect, right? That's, to me, that's what this is all about. And so, yeah, I mean, I share the sentiment. Like, if that doesn't resonate with you, we're probably not going to have, we're probably not going to spend any quality time together. You know what I mean? Because our values are just not in alignment at all. You know what I mean?
And Chris, you were talking a lot about like with parenthood and stuff, and I don't have kids right now, but I want to speak to the people that maybe don't have kids for a second, and the excuse for not having life insurance is, well, I don't need it because I don't have kids, I don't have a family. I mean, most people I know that don't have kids eventually do want to have kids, right? But I'll tell you this: having a solid financial foundation that dividend paying whole life insurance creates for us makes having kids in the future so much easier. Like, if I were to have kids right now, I would feel a lot better about having kids right now with the financial foundation I have through these policies than when I didn't. Because if I were to have kids now, I've already got all of the life insurance that I need. I'm able to use my policy to continue building wealth so that I can provide for my family. Obviously having kids pretty expensive, right? So, if I needed to borrow against the policy for stuff like that associated with having a kid, then I already have that in place. Like, it makes it so much easier to make that decision, like when you're ready, because you already have such a powerful financial foundation, and one that's going to continue to grow for the rest of your life as well. So for me, if you're considering, like, if you don't have kids right now, but maybe you do eventually and you want to get married and start that family, start with the financial foundation first, because it's just going to make it so much easier, when that time comes, and like I would already have, I already have the system in place to pay for my kids' college if I had kids in the future. I already have the system in place to cover the wedding, those things that you were talking about. Like, it's already in place right now. So the fact that, if you don't have kids, it's not an excuse not to have life insurance, especially if you plan on starting a family later on down the road. And one other thing I wanted to mention, you were talking about retirement too, is if we think about these things critically, just do a little bit of critical thinking, it still makes sense to have a life insurance policy, a whole life insurance policy, because it's going to make your retirement so much better. Like, are you really planning on using your portfolio for your income, for your long-term care expenses, for your health care expenses, and then whatever's left over, that's what you're going to pass on to your kids, the next generation? No. And if you are, you better hope that you get that 12% every single year that Dave swears up and down that you're going to get. Because if not, you're not going to have anywhere near enough money to live off of, let alone do all those other things and cover all those other expenses. Life insurance makes retirement so much easier. It's a great volatility buffer. You have those living benefits. You pass on a massive amount of wealth to the next generation. And so it gives you permission to spend all of the other assets and use all the other assets to live those golden years that they tell us about, right? And so a couple of things I just wanted to touch on that you mentioned that really resonated with me. And then just different ways to think about these policies, guys. It's not just about having death benefit for a certain amount of time while you have kids and then that's it. These things do a lot more for us than that.
I love it. I love what you said there. You know, one of the things that is interesting. I just got a comment on this. I don't even know who it was. It was somebody I'd never seen comment before, but I think he was like a newer viewer. And he made a comment the other day. It was on one of my like how to properly design a whole life policy videos. One of the more watched videos that I have. And he basically said like, why would we do this when I could just put money into term and then why would I do this? Oh, did I lose you guys?
No, you're
okay. Why would I do this if I could just buy term and invest the difference and like put money into the index that historically speaking is done 10.3% and bonds have averaged, 5.8% over the years or whatever. And like, why would I put money into a whole life policy earning 4 to 5%? That's just stupid. It's suboptimal. That was his comment. And so what's interesting about this is that once again, it goes back to what I said before. Like on a spreadsheet, we could say this. My only response is like, okay, that's great that you're saying these numbers. What happens when you take the results from 1980 to 1999 away from those statistics, right? Because I'm really big at asking why. Why do things happen? Why do you feel the way that you do? And if you're telling me you feel the way you do and you disagree with me because of the fact that, you can get this 10 point whatever percent and this 5.8%, bond return. If you're telling me that's your reason, why do you think that's actually going to work? And the reason is like, I know, like it's because of the bull market that we had from 1980 to 1999 and how absurd those returns were historically. And if you take those results away, his whole argument falls on its face. And so then if we were to go a step further and say, all right, do you think that's ever going to happen again? Do you think we're ever going to get to 19% interest rates and then have this, 25, 30-year period of declining interest rates in interest rate environments, which are going to, push asset prices up the entire time? Are we ever going to have another time in history where a thing like a 401k is going to get created that takes everybody who's never invested in anything in their life and puts them into the market and literally trillions of dollars flood into investments that were never there before? Once again, pushing asset prices through the roof. If you look at PE ratios pre-1980 and PE ratios, from 1990 after, it's like a different world, as far as what they thought was acceptable and not acceptable. And so like, these are the things like, you can use statistics to make any argument, right? Like we use statistics to make our arguments. They make statistics to make theirs, and that's all fine and good. But at some point in time, common sense and deductive reasoning has to prevail, right? Like you have to realize like, not just like what's happening, but why is it happening? And is that why in alignment with what I value and what I believe?
Right.
Yeah. Chris, I think it's funny because I think there's a lot of, even in our industry too, there's certain agents out there that they think they're going to get 12, even 15% averages. And it's just insane. It's like, dude, Ray Dalio doesn't even get 15% averages, right? Like, do Do you even
I
know what
know.
you're talking about?
Yeah, but he's obviously going to transition his whole book at Bridgewater Capital over to IUL.
That's why he's
I was
making
just
all the
talking
money.
to Ray the other day. He's taken half of the profit, half of the proceeds inside of Bridgewater. He's going to put it into an IUL.
But to say this too, like, well, even if you could get those returns, what if you could get both? Right? It's like the money's liquid, right? You can still use it to go get whatever returns you want to get or you think you can get. So it's not either or, it's an and. And then, Chris, I want to just get back to that one story you shared about your old coach. Because I have come across one or two people with that same mindset, right? They don't care what happens. Oh, if I die, it's their problem. And I don't know if it's just where you were raised, but I know in my family, like the men take care of their wives, right? And so, Tom Hagner says it's life insurance is a women's issue, but we're all men here. And so from a man's perspective, I have an uncle and an aunt, and my uncle passed away, but dude, he set her up with everything she needed. She has cash flowing assets. She can live to 300 and she'll never run out of money. Right.
Love that.
Like, do you know how much I look up to this man as like a provider, a real man? And I just can't understand the opposite mindset of that. Why would you not want to take care of your family? Why would you not want to be the hero and be remembered, well beyond your lifetime?
Yeah, I mean, take the man and the woman thing out of it. It's a love decision, right? Like it's like how much life insurance you buy tells me how much you love your family, and what you want for your family. So here's what I'll say: if you say you love your family, and you don't maximize the life insurance that the life insurance company will give you, what you're doing is you're telling me you just have a massive ego, and it's all about you. It's not really about how much you love them; it's about your ego. That's what it is. I mean, just holding no punches. That's just the reality. And there's no way around it. So anyway, Jeff, you wanted to say something too, because.
Yeah, totally. So Matt, you got me thinking about when I was dating my wife and in that phase of life. So we've talked thoroughly about what we just talked about. Charles, you mentioned it too, the responsibility when we have the family. And Matt, you touched on what if we don't have the kids and where's life insurance come in? I think back to when I was dating my wife and, I wanted to be the best version of myself as I could be to attract my wife, right? And so for me, if we had a financial foundation going into even dating, and, obviously this may not fit. I wasn't at this point when I was dating, but I had a burning desire to make sure that as I went into a relationship and then she became my wife, that I was setting that foundation so that my wife felt stable. And I haven't done a very good job of it, quite honestly, but I do have a policy now. And I know if something were to happen to me, I don't have to worry at all about my family. And I've done that. So, I'm thinking back to, okay, how could I have, been a better mate? Well, I could have had a whole life insurance policy, 11 years ago, but I didn't. So having that foundation can just, I know it's kind of silly, like, oh, it makes you more attractable, but I mean, we do as a man have a responsibility to be the best versions of ourselves, preparing for our family, and the whole life just sets that in place.
Yeah, I don't think there's a doubt. I mean, and I think, I don't want to get all the women in the world upset right now that are like the bread earners in their family. I could see my wife watching this being like, oh, these guys is you need some estrogen up in here, there's plenty of households, that have wives that are primary breadwinners, and the husbands stay home, or the husbands, maybe make a little less money, and it's all cool. There's no judgment on either side of it. But if you are the primary breadwinner and primary provider for your family, there's a responsibility that comes with that. And historically speaking, sure, it's been the men. That's changing more and more, but I think still, from a statistical perspective, it's more predominantly men than women, which, whatever, no judgment, and to each their own. But, I know for me and my family, that's the case. I think for most of the people on this call, that's the case, and that's cool, but I've also talked to plenty of women over the years that are the breadwinners, that are the providers, that are massive go-getters and want to build cool things, and they make a lot of money and they want to add a lot of value to the world. And all that stuff too. And so I would just say, no matter how it breaks down, whatever your position is, I would really challenge everybody to think, if you're thinking to yourself that you don't really need or want the life insurance, I would really get you or encourage you to dig deep on why that's the case, because I think there's probably some subconscious blockages, some self-limiting beliefs, some stuff that goes way beyond, life insurance sales. Yeah, it's big stuff. It's big stuff. And, I don't think there's, in the entire financial industry, I don't think there's anything more important, no other product that's more important than life insurance, being sold, because it's the only thing that's going to guarantee a result. No other product in the world, aside from whole life insurance, can guarantee a specific result. Maybe annuities can guarantee income, but life insurance products in general are contractual. They're just straight contracts that put a result in place. And so, like, Matt, was talking earlier about, like, hey, I might have kids. Like, if it's meant to be, I'll have kids, right? And he doesn't know if he's going to or not. Is there a lucky lady in the mix yet, Matt, or what? Like, what's going on?
Yeah, I'm just.
All right.
Yeah, there is. I'm just.
Well,
I'm a man.
There we go.
All
right. So all the ladies watching, he's off the market, so leave him alone. But, like, so it's we know, like, all right, you have this, like, you wanna plan for the future, but, like, you don't know what the future holds. But it's so cool right now to be able to lock in a result, right? To be able to lock in, like, he knows whether it's for his kids or whether it's for a legacy that he wants to leave, an impact that he wants to make. It's so cool to know that by buying life insurance and getting a whole life policy or a convertible term policy with a plan to kind of convert it to a whole life policy and implement this plan from a long-term perspective, you're buying that result. And now what you do is you get to gamify the rest of your life because you know it's going to happen. How freaking cool is that? Yeah. Like, how cool is that? That you literally, instead of stressing and freaking out and being on the hustle and being on the grind and listening to Dave Ramsey and, oh, my term expired and everything I planned on doing didn't work. And now what am I going to do? And now I'm stressing and I'm struggling. I don't know how I'm going to pay for my kids' college. I don't know how I'm going to pay for their wedding. I don't know how I'm going to, maintain my standard of living in retirement. Or maybe I've got that covered, but now I've got that covered and I might have to just spend down all my assets. I'm not going to leave anything after the fact. Like, maybe they're stressed about that. Maybe they get sick in retirement and a lot of their retirement income and their legacy plan has to go towards paying, for alternative medical treatments or deductibles on medical treatments or stuff of that. And like all these things that are inevitable to happen in some way, shape, or form through your life. How cool is it to know that if you do what we're talking about, you've guaranteed an end result?
Oh, that damn internet, man.
It's got real good timing.
I know, seriously.
One thing. Oh, man. One thing that, along the lines of what Chris is saying here, and something that just hit me, for myself personally, getting a permanent life insurance policy was a way for me to have a higher level of accountability in my life. Mm-hmm. It was a sign of myself maturing to a point where I was ready to take responsibility for the outcomes that I wanted. And just being completely honest, for a majority of my life, or for a large part of my life, I avoided responsibility like the plague. I did whatever I could from job to job, from place to place, traveled all over. It was very transient in a lot of ways. And now as I'm maturing, my perspective has changed. And like, I'm to a point where it's important for me to take responsibility to grow as a person for the results that I want to achieve in my life. And a permanent life insurance policy is something that I can use to achieve that. And I don't know of any other, outside of potentially having children, like the kind of responsibility that comes along with that, the kind of responsibility that comes along with making the commitment to a permanent life insurance policy that is going to ensure a certain result will happen at the end of my life. Like for me, that was a big step in my personal development, quite frankly.
I love that.
It's awesome.
I love
man.
that. I feel like every time I go on a roll, like,
Yeah.
the
You leave us hanging.
I know. But seriously though, how cool is it? Like everybody talks about like the returns of whole life insurance, right? Like being not good enough, right? But what is the return? What is the value on the fact that when you have this system set up that you know you're going to have a result, that is that accountability push that you just talked about, that gives you the freedom and the empowerment to go out and do big things, to go take risks and maybe get bigger and better returns in different parts of your life that are not quantifiable on a whole life illustration, right?
Yeah.
But that are absolutely applicable when it comes to real life. Dramatic pause, exactly. You know, so like,
Yeah.
it's like, to me, that's what I talk about when I say life doesn't exist on a spreadsheet. Like, you know, and you can't just like run mathematical scenarios and do these returns, you know?
Yeah, Chris,
So,
you talk a lot about the way, you know, how these types of things allow you to show up more powerfully in your life. And, you know, just going back to, you know, I don't have kids or whatnot, but maybe we will at some point. But having the financial foundation that these things provide, it allows me to show up in my relationship as a man so much more powerfully. And I know this for a fact because I've been broke. I've been without the financial foundation, and I'm a different person. You know, when you're and you're talking about the like we get hung up on the internal rate of return of these policies, right? And chasing the highest rate of return. We don't talk a lot of times. We don't talk about the external rate of return that these policies give us, like showing up more powerfully, not being stressed about money. If something were to happen in my life or my lady's life, and she needed help, I needed help, you know, had an emergency, whatever, it's done, man. I'm not worried about it at all because I have that foundation in place, and I like. You know, it lowers your blood pressure. You're not worried about stuff. I'm not worried about the banking system right now. I just did a video on that. Like, I'm not worried about this stuff anymore. And it's because I know that I have my money with the best companies in the world. It's going to get that guaranteed result that you were talking about. And I'm free now. Like all that mental energy that would normally be occupied with stress about this and that is now freed up to allow me to create more powerfully and make an impact in all the content that I want to create, like all the things that I want to do with my life. It allows me to do it so much more efficiently, so much more powerfully, because I'm not worried about all this other stuff, all these other problems. Like it just solves so many problems in our lives. I can't understand why anybody would not want to have a foundation like that. It's mind-boggling to me.
it's fascinating. One of the things I remember I was up at in Colorado with Caleb Williams, and we were filming some content together, and we were doing this thing where I basically told, like, I made I don't know, at the time it was like 4 years ago now, it was like the audacious statement that if you buy whole life insurance, you'll actually live longer because of the fact that most disease is caused by stress.
Absolutely.
Right? And if disease is caused by stress and you have this policy that you know you have a financial foundation and that you know your family's taken care of, and that stress, which is so subconscious but so real and is so there, and I feel like a lot of the disease and a lot of the, you know, just overall sickness and energetic drains that we have in our life that we're fighting for that cause health issues gets solved, right? Yeah, Ian Vogel just said, you know, 95% of stress is caused by lifestyle, right? So if we know we can have this product and set our financial life up in a way and use financial products that give us peace of mind around that, you're going to live longer. You're going to be healthier. It's going to enable you to be more intentional in all these other areas of your life. And you can't put a rate of return on that, you know?
Yeah, they call it financial toxicity. There's a study on that, and they did a study on cancer patients, and the cancer patients that actually survived, a good portion of the survivors passed away due to the stress of financial hardship more than the cancer itself. And so they coined the term financial toxicity. You could look it up. It's actual multiple
That's
studies on
crazy.
that. And I'm like, whole life
Wow.
could have been the prime,
Still.
savior for a lot of people. And if you think
Yeah.
about like our country, how everything is set up, right? We follow what's given to us, the norms, and they're kind of created for us. We work a job, we have to put a percentage of our money into Social Security. We have all these entities tell us how we have to live our life, right? Could you imagine a world? Think about this. Imagine a world where the government had to start plugging away in a whole life policy when we're young. And then we think about our adulthood. Think about the amount of people that open up a credit card. And one of the biggest growing industries right now is pay now later, pay later corporations, like a firm, like you want to buy something and then you spread it
It's
out
like
over
a
time.
payday loan kind of deal.
Payday loans, right? And they're getting atrocious freaking rates or interest rates
Absurd.
charged and stuff like that. But just imagine if we had a world where it's like normal at an age of 15 or 18, right? You have to open up your whole life policy, start contributing to it. All the problems it would solve. You would never have to use a credit card. I think about all the times in my life I had to use a credit card. I'm thinking, had I met freaking Chris when I was younger and I started whole life, my whole life, everything would have been dramatically different. Thanks, Chris. Where the heck were you at? You were at National Life probably around that time.
Nice.
Doing the same thing I was, but
nice.
I try to tell these young bucks, I'm like, look, there's going to be a day you're going to need money. You're going to need to borrow money. You're going to need. Wouldn't it be so much better you start building that private banking system now? Like, so you have that access to the cash. Wouldn't it make more sense to do it now? And I just wish I could take a chip out of my head and plant it in their head. But that's a whole different conversation.
So Matt, you were just talking about this, and it makes me think about this, what you just said, doing this with kids. Look in the bottom right corner. The liability in the US per citizen is $635,000, right?
Wow.
So think about how disgusting that is. $635,000 of liability per person right now, and that's going up every single day, right? So if that's the case, imagine what would happen if the US government, for every kid that was born, said we're going to put $50,000 into a whole life policy for every kid that was born at day 14, and have it be like even a single pay mech that just like rolled up. Think about how different this world would be, and all the different opportunities, and how, and honestly, think about how much stress that would take off the government. Right? Think about like the financial freedom that would create for the government.
Yeah, for the government.
Crazy.
Yeah, for sure.
It's crazy. They're already 600. Let's take 10% of what they're liable for every citizen in this country, and just solve the problem. How about that? If they did that in one generation, all the problems could be solved. And honestly, I think it's the only possible way they could solve this $34 trillion debt issue.
Yeah, if they just took half that money they send to Ukraine and then put it in a whole life right now, we'd probably solve all the problems.
No, I mean, but what would really solve the problem though is they just dump all the tax revenue into an IUL.
Yeah.
Then
This guy's got jokes.
It's
Jokes.
Yeah.
Yeah, right with Ray Dalio right there. So no, this is good stuff, man. I have fun with this video because I think this is important stuff, and I love the different perspectives. I love I just love the the different communication styles and hearing the different way that y'all think. And I think this is I think one of the most important topics. I think it's one of the areas that isn't talked about enough in our space because people are too busy just trying to sell what they want to sell, or like, and I would say like, that's why I always say we gotta, as life insurance agents, we gotta stop being life insurance agents, and we gotta start being entrepreneurs. We gotta, and the reason I say that is because entrepreneurs have one job, and it's to solve people's problems. You start a job, you start a business, you start a company, you create a product, you do all these different things because you're just trying to figure out solutions to people's problems in different areas. And so, I think if you really want to be an amazing life insurance agent, you got to come at it as a solutions provider, and you got to know the products, you got to understand them inside out, you got to know all the levers, you got to do all these different things, but really, you can't go into any conversation. It's one of the reasons I hate sales presentations, right? Because like, typically speaking, a sales presentation is geared to try to sell you what I'm trying to present to you, versus trying to have a conversation with you to figure out like, hey, what's going on in your life, having a conversation to figure out, like, identify challenges, and then, be able to figure out, do you know enough about what you have to offer to be able to, fit that in? And is it authentic? Is it genuine? Are you really actually trying to, to do that? Or are you willing to just, try to add value to somebody's life sometimes without selling them something, which I think is important, and I think, that's why I love having you guys on the team, because I know you guys all come from that perspective. And so, anybody have anything they want to say before we bounce?
It's definitely our job as advisors to allow ourselves and walk our clients through the different stages of life that they'll encounter, because one of the biggest issues that we have, or that, just as humans that we have, is we can't really see into the future. Like, anything beyond 10 years into the future doesn't really exist to us. We don't have that kind of foresight. However, as agents and as the professionals that we are, it's our job to illustrate and to walk our clients through what that's going to feel like, right? So their future selves will be grateful for getting the things that we're recommending now. They'll be grateful for having that in the future. And so we have to bridge that gap so that we can really show them and allow them to, like, emotionally become attached to what that looks like into the future. And that's where, term insurance is really, that's your immediate protection, but that whole life and that permanent protection, that solves all the problems that we have later on in our lives. And it just impacts us in such a positive way by planning for those things now, and just being prepared for that future that we don't know is what it's going to look like. But at least we have, basically the Swiss Army knife of, our financial product is that whole life policy. It just gives us more options in our retirement and, in the later periods of our life.
I love it. That's amazing. Anybody else?
Yeah, Chris, I just want to share something, because it was brought up, but Matt was talking about cancer survivors. Most of the time they die because of the stress and financial stress and things like that. So my aunt, who I shared earlier, my uncle set her up great financially. She's a cancer survivor. So, and he's been gone for 10 years. And it's crazy.
That's awesome. One of the things, actually, now that you say that, Michael, it brings me back to thinking about what I was thinking about when Matt was talking as well. Kind of the same deal, is that, so I share the story a lot about my father-in-law, right? Getting pancreatic cancer. And on November 4th, 2020, he was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer, went into the hospital with a blood clot in his leg, doing the scan. Actually went in thinking he had a twisted ankle. They found out it was a blood clot that went from his ankle to his groin. In scanning it, they found a 7-centimeter tumor that spread from his pancreas to his liver already, which anybody that knows anything about pancreatic cancer, that's basically a death sentence, And what was crazy is, so we turned down all the the Western world treatments, like all the things that insurance companies would pay for. We turned down because it was radiation and chemo. And when you dig deep into that, they realize that, like, it may keep you alive a little bit longer, but ultimately what kills you is not the cancer, it's the radiation and the chemo. That's because your body just shuts down because they got to give it such a massive dose. And so we just like, all right, may keep them alive longer, but the quality of life is going to suck. And so what's the point of that? And so, but at the same time, we didn't want to give up. And the nature of my wife and I, Hannah and I, we're problem solvers, and so we scoured the internet to find all the best naturopathic cancer doctors, specialists that deal with pancreatic specifically. And it was funny in doing that research, being able to have capital to pay for all this. He's alive today, even though they gave him 90 days to live. 3 years later, he's still playing golf 4 days a week and, enjoying life. And B, the crazy part was pancreatic cancer, in doing this research, and this, I don't want to get too woo-woo-y on everybody here, but what we did is we found this this site that they did all these studies. And this is actually like scientifically done, where they interviewed cancer treatment patients about the type of cancer they had. And then, based on counseling and then different stresses in their life, they could directly attribute what type of cancer was created by what type of stress.
Wow.
And pancreatic cancer was a financial stress, ironically. And I, love the fact that my father-in-law was a traditional financial advisor for Wells Fargo for 45 years and had financial stress, but he came from nothing, and his whole purpose in life was taking care of the family and taking care, and ironically, he didn't really believe in life insurance very much, right? The only reason he did what he did was because I pushed him like hell to do it, to get it in place, and so it's just like, I find it interesting, the people, like, what happens is this is something and a strategy that most people don't even think about until it's too late, and by the time they want it, they can't get it.
Yeah.
And we've spoken to that a little bit throughout this interview, this panel, but I think I just want to end on my side by saying, don't be that person, right? Don't be the person that tries to avoid it and is, gets to a place where you have that regret, because that, I could promise you, there's a lot of regrets that, we can have in life, and some of them you can have atonement for, whatever. But, when it's your life on the line and you make this kind of mistake where now you've lost control of how you can actually make the decisions that impact your life, right? There was no guarantee that my father-in-law was going to live through that. But the great guarantee and the great empowerment thing is we were able to galvanize as a family and come together and make decisions without a care in the world about economically how it was going to happen. And that, I think, that alone kept him alive, right? And gave him the hope and gave him the confidence. And, I really think there's something to that energetically, on top of the actual treatments that were done, right? Because I do believe the mind is a powerful thing. And so knowing that you have a system in place that can help you, succeed, and that you're prepared for anything that happens, I think is extremely important.
Yeah, absolutely.
Agreed.
So, all right. Very cool. Well, another fun week, guys.
Yes, sir.
Next week,
Yeah.
same time, same
Awesome.
bat channel.
Let's do it.
All right,
Good
guys.
stuff.
Well, all right, guys. Have a great week.
Thanks, Chris.
Thanks for being here. And if anybody wants to talk about their life insurance or wants to go deeper into it, I'm going to put a link in the description below. It's actually there already. You can go down and you can click on it, set up a clarity call with a Life 180 agent. And I would say this, I'm also going to put on, have you guys put in the chat too? You can put your information, your channels. All these guys here with me here, Michael, Matt, Jeff, Charles, and Ian, they all have their own YouTube channels, and they're all growing, newer on the process, but they're all like creating great content that I'm watching every single week, and really want to support them because they're doing amazing things. So if any of you guys could get involved and could help them, by sharing their videos, liking their videos, commenting on their videos, just give them a little love, give them a little support, go check them out. And that's it. We will see you next week.
Thanks, Chris.